We're live, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we're ready to begin then. It's 8:59. I'm going to call this session of the Board of Revision to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Ojibwe, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our treaty water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nations Treaty 3 territory. With me today are Linda McFadden and Valerie Werhoon. My name is Harvey Diamond. I'll be chairing this meeting. Our administrator is Crystal Harlan, and the City Assessment Department is represented by Mr. Arif Das Mohammed. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application, and we will be limiting discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must first be sworn in. Be advised the comparisons of assessments of properties not considered as evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order to be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or to classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. And should you wish to appeal, information on do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessment testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will be given an opportunity to summarize if they wish to do so. Once all the evidence upon an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The person will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the Board will deliver it in private and make its decisions. You will receive the Board's decision by mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will form part of a public record. And today we have one item left on the docket, which is item number 8. And Mrs. Harlan, you can please affirm both the assessor and the accessibility at this time?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Applicant, would you please stand? Would you please state your full name?
Marcelo Navarro.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Assessor, would you please state your full name?
Arif Das Mohammed.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have one item left on the docket today, and it pertains to the property at 530 Century Street. And I understand that right now there's a 40 institutional classification on part of it, and that it appears, Mr. Navarro, that you're also seeking a tax-exempt religious exemption on another part that is not presently on the roll. Is that correct?
Well, it's on the rent roll, but we would be seeking an exemption on it.
Well, it's on the rent roll. I meant the tax roll.
Correct.
Okay. And is there any preliminary matters that have to be delved into before we proceed?
I don't believe so. We're in agreement with the school tax exemption. It's the religious portion that we just question.
Okay, and Mr. Dustman, I did read ahead the evidence to prepare for today, and I see that the applicant is also seeking a larger school tax exemption because there's a larger, area that's now occupied by that particular tenant.
Yeah, and we're okay with that. We're also okay with the final value. So, yeah, it's just the religious exemption that we just need some clarification on.
Okay, and I think we're ready to proceed then, and then we're ready to hear your evidence. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed.
Yeah, actually, would it be better if Mr. Navarro starts off because it's that they're seeking the exemption on that religious portion there?
Yeah, You know what, I wouldn't, I think it would, I think that's a good suggestion. I think it would be better to hear Mr. Navarro first, and yeah, if you're okay, Mr. Navarro, to go first on this matter?
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is 530 Century Street, and we are looking at file number 241729. On page 1, you can see the assessment summary, and that gives you the property information relating to some of the physical attributes of the property, as well as the land area and the assessment that we are seeking. On page 2, the intended use of the report. This is strictly for assessment, property assessment appeal purposes. In terms of the pictures, you can see the pictures on page 5. These are just Google clippings. One is a bird's eye view and the other one is a street view. And on page 6, you can see the property description. Highest and best use, we believe that the continued use of the existing use is the highest and best use. And on page 10, you can look at the income approach that we applied. You can see that we use the actual rent in this case. For the most part, we didn't feel that there was much need for any type of adjustments on the rents. So when we have a property where the rents tend to be older, we tend to look at the market and adjust accordingly. Now, in this particular case, there was, in our opinion, not much need to adjust the rents in any way. Most of them have rent step-ups, or they are more recently negotiated rents. So in terms of the property and how it's laid out in relation to the classification and liability, there are effectively 3 income streams. So the first stream that I'm going to look at is obviously the larger stream, which is the class 60 or other, and that includes most of the tenancies in this property. In total, for the class 60, we are looking at 118,781 square feet. I'm just going to have a quick sip because my throat is starting to bother me a little bit.
Take your time, Mr. Navarro. We've got time to hear this matter this morning.
Yeah, okay, so the rent, when we tally up all the leases, the effective net rent is $9.05 per square foot. And the potential is $1,074,613. If you turn the page over, you can see the rent relating to the school tax exempt portion. And as the chair noted, he also saw that there was an increase in size. So now that size has increased to 10,090, and we have an effective rent on it of $11.94 per square foot. I believe the assessor mentioned that they're okay with this portion of it. So the last portion is the exempt portion. And this is an organization known as Y Encounter Inc. The lease area is 1,363 square feet. And the net rent that's been applied to this is $8.50. And that is based on a lease that started on August 22nd and ends July 31st, 23. So in terms of vacancy and collection loss, we applied a vacancy and collection loss of 4.50%. Shortfall, I believe we are not disagreeing with the assessor. We applied effectively the same shortfall, and that goes for non-recovered expenses as well. In terms of the cap rate, I will delve into the cap rate after the presentation because there are a few corrections that we already corrected, unfortunately, after the cap rate submission had been submitted. So I'll go over those corrections. They're very slight, so I can mention them now because I am looking at the chart. So there are some sales that we had looked at for properties where we had income in place, and in certain situations we imputed a value. So basically what we did is the same as an appraiser would. They would look at market comparisons to try and figure out the value of a property. In this case, we were trying to estimate a cap rate derived from the sale. So you can see the sales there and the variance in terms of cap rates. Now the cap rate conclusion chart is where there was a slight error. So if you can go to the second paragraph around the middle of the page, in the section called capitalization rate conclusions, Winnipeg Industrial as of April 1, 2023. And you can see there that there's a sentence there that says the average April 23 cap rate compression for Class B industrial should be 25 basis points for higher quality assets and 0 basis points for lower quality assets. That's actually not what we wrote in there, and I believe that may have just been an error. But we actually applied a 25-point increase on the higher end of the cap rate for Class B or grade B. So you can see that there's a column there looking at the April 21 figures and then the April 23 figures. So the one that we're looking at is the one that says investment grade B. So that one right now says 6.5% to 7.50%. That should actually say 6.50 to 7.75%. And the next one, which says investment grade or non-investment grade, which says 8% on the April 21 column. We actually applied an 8% to the April 23 as well, and I believe that was just a typo in our handed. And you can see it actually in the paragraph below the one that we just looked at, where it says we have not observed any compression in non-investment grade properties as of April 1, 2023. So that what that tells us is that there shouldn't have been any change from the 8% that we applied in April 21. There should have been an 8% on April 23 as well. And again, those are the corrections that I've made.
Okay.
On the next page, which is page 13, you can see a summary of all 3 income streams. And again, we are looking at a total value of 17,939,742 or 17,940. Now, for the Class 60 income stream, that is the one that says FWF. That has a total value of 15,968,645. The 40S, which is a school tax exempt, has a value of 1,799,181. And the exempt portion is 171,916. Now, in terms of classification and liability, I believe the assessor said that they're all right with school tax exemption. So I will flip to the organization known as Y Encounter Inc. And that is the tendency that relates to the full exemption or the church matter or the religious exemption. So that is on page 16. This organization is known again as Y Encounter Inc. Y Encounter Inc. is a charitable nonprofit focused on prayer, biblical teachings, and spreading the word through literature. So effectively, we think that this organization is working as a religious group. I visited the unit and it wasn't open at the time. My understanding from my research is that the organization holds meetings, prayer meetings, prayer instructions, and also organizes these drives, which basically gathers a group of individuals, and they gather to meet on how they can spread this literature across the community. So the fact that not only are they acting almost like a mission, there are prayer groups that function in this space. There are prayer meetings. I think from that basic definition, we are looking at what is functionally a church. And that would be covered under section 22(1) of the Act. And you can see there that subject to section 25 and 26, real property is exempt from taxation levied by the municipality, other than for local improvements where the real property is owned by a religious denomination and is occupied and used by the denomination, primarily one as a church, synagogue or place of worship, is a religious retreat house or for religious instructional purposes. As indicated in the attached materials concerning Y Encounter, we believe that all these criteria are met, that the tax exemption should be applied to Y Encounter in this case. Now, the organization leases this space, but this also constitutes a type of ownership as indicated in the case of Wasso Inc. versus City of Winnipeg Assessor. If we turn to the appendix, you can see on page 17, the appendix starts. On page 18, we see the income expenses submitted by the owner, and those go on for quite a few pages. You can go through those at your discretion. I think, again, I think in terms of the value, we're in agreement here, so I don't think we need to look too much into detail of that in terms of detail. And there's also the information relating to the other school exempt organizations. Our organization actually starts on page 84. So this is the historical data relating to their financial perspective. So what they're doing in terms of the organization and their finances. So that typically has to be submitted to the government in order to maintain their status as a charitable organization and nonprofit status. So that is in relation to that. And in terms of the church itself, you can see the organization there on page 89. And in terms of its designation, it's a charitable organization, as I mentioned. The charity type, advanced religion category, supportive religion, mission, missionary organization, and also their CRA number. Now, we have some organizations that function almost like missionary groups. For example, the MCCs function like missionary groups. Where I think this differs is in the actual location itself, where people are actually going there and there is prayer going on there. These are prayer groups, and they're organizing in terms of getting their message out to the community. So we believe that this fits the definition of church group. So we're asking that the board grant this exemption to this organization. Now, I will flip to the capitalization rate study on, actually, I'm going to ask the chair if we really need to go through that at this point, because we are, I think, in agreement on value. I don't know if we need to spend the next hour going over this.
No, you get to the value a little differently, but you do end value. So I don't know if it's that crucial. I think the big thing here, Mr. Doyle, that I see is whether we make a finding that you're to the religious exemption.
Yeah, and typically when we apply for these types of things, there's two routes to take. One is through the appeal process and one is through the application process. I believe the assessor would agree that there are two processes available, right?
Yes.
And certainly we wouldn't be closed off to the other process as well if the assessor needed more evidence. But I think in terms of the specifics of the organization, what their function is, it's quite visible that they're functioning as a church there. And they also have some other missionary goals too, so so I'll leave it there and I will ask, I'm open for questions now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Das Mohammed, any questions you may have at this time? Let's go.
Questions and comments, maybe. Our issue is the tenant a religious denomination? The Manitoba Assessment Act doesn't specifically define what a religious denomination is,
So
but
you're making your argument now, Mr. And that's satisfactory, but you'll have your opportunity of doing that. I think right now you're asking questions, and I could keep that just because we have a protocol that we like to follow. And you'll certainly, Mr. Das Mohammed, be given an opportunity to make your argument, but that'll be another.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Navarro, you said you tried to visit the place, but you weren't able to?
Yeah, it was not open at the time.
Okay, and so do you know what happens there without inspecting it? Like, is there services conducted there on site?
Sure, there are services, these are prayer services. So people go there, they talk to people amongst the community, their own community there. They have prayer sessions, they have instructional based biblical teachings. I think very much in tune with what you would see at any other religious denominational meeting place where you have a structured service and you have, you can break apart into different prayer groups. That is my understanding from their website. And I'm not going to judge how they organize their church. Obviously, I have no right to do that. That's the observation that I'm making from their website. So again, you hit on a point there that how the act itself is very vague in terms of what is a religious organization. I think a lot of things can fall under that. So I think purposely the framers of the legislation leave it open to interpretation, and in our opinion, this meets that criteria.
Okay, I think those are all the questions. That's the only question I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Das Mohammed. Ms. Werhoen, do you have any questions?
Well, just to go on that a little bit, is this open every day? The church?
I can't validate that, but I do think it is actually open every day. Yes.
Okay, so it's not just on a Sunday or a Saturday for service then?
No. Yeah, I think they have duties beyond just the regular church things that they do on certain days.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, thank you.
And Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
This may be my ignorance showing, but so they are tax exempt or income tax exempt as a charitable organization, or they're recognized as a charitable organization, but does CRA recognize them as a religious denomination, as a church?
Yeah, so the CRA actually categorizes them into different groupings based on what their activities are. So if you turn to page...
Right, I see that advancement of religion. That's...
Yeah, exactly. So those are the breakdowns from the CRA as to how they're classified. So in terms of the designation and description, they are a charitable organization. And then they give you the charity type, which is advancement of religion. And then the category, which is supportive religion, mission, or missionary organization.
And this is how other churches would be categorized, is that right?
I believe so. I believe in terms of the category, it may differ slightly. I mean, it may just say church. I'm not exactly sure of all of the categories that are involved, but
okay.
I think there probably would be some similarities between.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Navarro, so I guess the question I have, first of all, is what actually, besides, well, what do they do in this building? Can you tell me everything that is done in that building, in that leasehold
Sure.
property?
Right, so the place functions as a place of a community gathering place, a place to worship, a place to pray, and a place to organize their missionary work, which is spreading the word through their written materials. So that also seems to occur here, where they organize and organize the packages together in terms of putting the written materials together. And then, there has to be some organization in terms of how they hit the community and what areas they go to. All of that goes there. And again, we don't view that as any different than what happens at a church or a church drive or a synagogue drive. Most synagogues or churches or mosques have activities outside of the scope of simple prayer. It is a community place, and I believe that's what this place is as well.
Okay, so do they, you indicated that they gather printed material that I suppose is sent all over the country, maybe even abroad as well?
At this point, I think they're just national. I don't think they're international.
Okay, so then they gather printed material they send all over the country?
Yes, yes. And
So
I
then-
believe this group is popping up in other parts of the country as well.
Uh-huh. So it's a distributional center in part then?
I would say that that is one of the functions of the building, but that is just one of the functions of the building.
And where is this material printed?
I can't say for sure whether it's printed there, but this is where they have the drives for it.
So it might be printed there, so it might be a print shop. I mean, it'd be really good
Yeah.
to know
Yeah.
what actually done there, because the definition says it's got to be primarily used in these
Yeah.
functions. If we
Yeah.
anything that's done there, so I'm trying to find out if it's not primarily used for that. If there's other functions that are already also done there, you've got to establish for me that the primary use are the uses under mentioned 1, 2, and 3.
So again, and this is in reading materials on the organization, the primary purpose of this place is to meet and have the prayer sessions. And to organize the drives to spread the materials across the community.
Okay, but what
But I
else?
can't answer.
That's what I want to know. That's what I want to know. What else is done there, though, because
Yeah,
I got to be satisfied.
great.
So I want you to satisfy me that the primary use,
Yeah,
those 3 subheadings, and there aren't other things that are done there that
Sure.
might get out of the primary use.
exactly. I can't confirm with 100% certainty that the materials are printed there. Again, they may be printed outside. I can't validate that, but again, what I'm saying is that what I see is that the primary goals of this organization and what they do there is to invite people in from the community to hear their prayer, their prayers, and to join in, and that's where I think most of the activities lie.
Okay, my next question then is a religious denomination, and what denomination are they?
I wouldn't know, Mr. Diamond. I believe there's some type of Christian organization. I don't really get too involved in that side of the matter. I mean, I know that there are religious organizations in Manitoba that are related to the devotion of Darth Vader. So it can vary considerably.
Well,
I do believe that they are a Christian-based organization.
Okay, and And in all fairness to you, Mr. Navarro, I understand that you haven't been there and you're the only person giving evidence. And it's a very, this is a small window, and you've got to establish that your organization falls into it to get the exemption. And you haven't been there, so you haven't observed what exactly is done. So you're basically surmising, and you're asking us. I just pointing this out. You're asking us to make a finding based on your surmising, and I feel uncomfortable with that. I'd like to know exactly what's done there, and be satisfied that this organization, what they are doing there, falls into that very limited exemption that's offered by the Municipal Assessment Act.
Well, I mean, as an alternative to that, Mr. Chair, I mean, I would be willing to invite the assessor to go with me to a prayer session there and see exactly what's happening. And I think if we were to go through the application process effectively, that's what would have to happen.
Yes. And I'm sure if it qualified, the assessor would probably be in agreement right now. But nobody's sure what exactly is going on there. You're asking us to make a finding based on, and I know that you're giving the evidence truthfully and honestly and the best ability, but the fact that you haven't been there and observed everything is what makes it difficult, because there's nobody from the organization here to give us evidence. And I know you're born, I know that you are telling the truth from the best of your ability, Mr. Navarro. I understand that. And I respect the fact that you are not going on a limb and saying anything that you're not sure of. So I respect that too. Because your credibility is, I know, is important, and you've always had that with me, and you still do, and you do today. But you're asking for exemption, and it's not that I want to help you. I'd like to, but to do so, I might need just a little bit more.
Yes.
My panel might not agree with me, but that's sort of the way I see it.
No, I understand. It would have been more advantageous to actually go there and actually walk in and for it to be open.
Yeah, and I'd like to see that you and Mr. Das Mohammed get together and make the application, and I'm sure if the assessment department is satisfied that you qualify for that exemption, we probably wouldn't be here today. But anyway, okay. Well, thank you very much for coming forward and answering your questions the way you did, and I know you did so, as I said, honestly, and I respect that, Mr. Navarro. Thank you. I have no further questions. Mr. Das Mohammed, would you like to proceed?
Actually, I was, Mr. Chairman, I think you asked the questions that I was gonna suggest, and we have no problems inspecting the place as long as it's mutually agreeable time. And if it is a church and most of the activities are done because of worship, we would grant that exemption. So I'm open to inspecting that unit.
Okay, well, I hope that both of you can do that very, very quickly. And I'm just wondering, on that basis, do you want us to make a decision today, or do you want to adjourn this matter for further argument if need be? And I mean, I don't want to. I know you can always go to the municipal board, but and I know we don't like to keep matters on the docket, but at the same time, I think this is an important matter, and I really don't feel comfortable making a decision either way without all the information that I like to see. And I think the information is there, Mr. Dustman. You indicated that you would.
I'm open to it, Mr. Chair. If the assessor is willing to go out there with me, I certainly wouldn't have any objection to this being adjourned until then.
Yeah, and if we do see something that warrants that, you could even do an application process where they would be exempt starting this year.
Yeah.
Okay, well, since that's really the only basis of the appeal, because you're basically in line with other values, I'm going to go on camera with my panel, and we'll have you back in a minute after we make a decision. Okay.
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 I'll be right back. We're live, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so we've had our discussion now, and we've come to the conclusion that Section 22(1) is a very, very narrow matter, and I think we require evidence to show that it falls into one of the three matters that it has to either be a church, primarily a church, synagogue, or a place of religious worship, and that's or a religious retreat house, or it's got to be used for religious and instructional purposes only, or not only, but primarily. And I guess a combination of those three matters would also probably suffice as well. And we don't know what else is carried on there. Because it's narrow, we really don't want to widen that very narrow exemption without evidence, but we don't want to preclude the applicant from proceeding if the evidence is there. I'm satisfied, as is my panel, that both Mr. Navarro and Mr. Dustin-Hammond are very, very reasonable people and who have our complete credibility, both of you. And we're hoping that you can, with the evidence and delving into this, can establish and make a finding yourselves. But we're only going to have this matter carried forward in the case that you can't come to that conclusion, in which case we would hear evidence at a later date, and hopefully the proper evidence will be put forward at that time so we can make a finding, and an educated finding for you. So on that basis, we're going to adjourn this hearing and hope that we'll adjourn it sine die, and hope that we don't see it again, and you can come to a conclusion. Okay.
Obviously, Mr. Chair, if we come to the conclusion, for example, that it is a church, we come back, we give our evidence, or can we sign an agreement at that point?
I think you can sign an agreement at that point.
Okay.
Okay. I hope that you don't have to come back. We're not looking to create further sessions of our board.
Yes.
And instead, we are satisfied that both of you are reasonable and competent, and that you'll make a decision based on the evidence. And that, Mr. Navarro, I just want to point out that if it doesn't qualify, if it's not primarily used for those subsections of 22(1), and you don't get the exemption, I hope you don't come back without, unless you can establish that it's primarily used for that. And if you can, then you're entitled to the exemption. And I'm sure that hopefully if you can establish that, the assessment department will also see that, so we won't have to deal with this matter any further.
Yes, I think in either scenario, we can probably sign an agreement.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you, both of you. Great weekend,
Have a good weekend, everyone.
everybody.
Weekend. Goodbye.
Are we frozen?
Mr. Chair, are we done now, or do we need to turn off the feed and then come back?
Well, you know what? I guess we have to you have to have something for your, you need a summation from us, I think, of some kind of what we did today. So I think we should turn and come back.
Okay, I will turn off the feed then.
Okay.
Just a moment, please. Mr. Chair, I'm a little new at this. Does Mr. Applicant need to stay, or what?
No, we should deal with this matter in camera. So
Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.
Great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.